Hi there, this is Robert and this is my first Warhammer Fantasy video battle report. So, bit of background, I've had a Bretonnian undead army I've been building for ages now, a couple of years I think, and this will be my first time using them fully painted. And it just so happened that shortly before I finished painting them, the Nagash book with the Undead Legions rules came out, and it was kind of serendipitous because I had archers, I had knight units and so on, and the Undead Legions is the one way to actually do that with an undead army. So I was actually really excited about this. So in my army, my general is a vampire blender lord, Red Fury, usual stuff. I didn't give him any ward save except for the Dragon Helm, and he has the scroll. Then I have a level 4 High Leash Priest, and he has the Cloak of Dunes for escaping his unit. Then I have a vampire hero who is on a hell steed, which is the flying steed, with the obsidian amulet. And then a white king who's my BSB, and he has the banner of the barrows. I have a Tomb Prince with a great weapon for a weapon skill boost. My core is 20 skeleton archers, 5 horsemen archers, a big ghoul unit and a small ghoul unit. Then 2 units of 3 Vargheists, 12 Black Knights, 6 Blood Knights, and 2 Screaming Skull catapults. So in this game I was playing a combat heavy and magic light Lizardmen list. From the right I set up a Vargheist unit, a Skull catapult, my big ghoul unit, my Black Knights with 2 characters in them, and the skeleton horsemen behind them. Then the Vargheists were in the forest near the middle, and on the left there's my small priest bunker, and the rest of the left flank is just my shooting units. And then the Blood Knights with the vampire on Hellsteed behind them. My opponent had on the right 2 skink units with a level 2 mage in the back one, an Engine of the Gods, a Scar veteran on a Carnosaur. Behind the forest there's actually 3 Croxigore, and then another Engine of the Gods, a skink unit with another level 2, and an Old Blood on the second Carnosaur. In the marsh on my left is a Razordon unit, and then there's the Skink Crox unit. Lastly, he put his chameleon skinks on the far right on a hill. I didn't actually realise that my horsemen were actually also scouts, but overall I was pretty happy with the deployment. For spells, my Vampire Lord took the signature spell on vampires, my flying level 1 took Doom and Darkness, and my High Priest took the signature spell, the Killing Blow spell, the ward save spell, and +1 attacks on the Lore of Nakara. During deployment, my opponent asked if we could use the mysterious terrain rules. I didn't really know what they were, because it's been a long time, but why not? The forest side deployed my Vargheists in. One had fear causing, one was a normal forest, so that did nothing. The forest with his crocs in was a blood forest, so he'll have to move out. The swamp was a misty swamp, which does damage to your unit. And then the big altar in the center became Sorcerer's Stones, which casts a spell every magic phase on the nearest unit. Anyway, his first turn, he moves up, keeping formation across the board. The Sorcerer's Stones kill 3 of his skinks with a fireball. He gets Curse of Anra here on my Black Knights in the magic phase, and his Razordons knock 5 ghouls off my priest bunker. My Vargheists on the right charge the skink chameleons, he flees, and I move up a little. I move up slightly, kind of feeling cautious at the moment, and also forgetting that I have a movement spell, more importantly. I keep the Black Knight still because of the curse, and I position my ghouls so that if he gets a lucky charge on the knights or the ghouls, I can countercharge with the other unit. My vampire on Hellsteed goes into the Blood Knights and they move up. In magic, I put Doom and Darkness on his Skink Crocs unit, and then I have a 4 dice Irresistible Force bubbled incantation of Righteous Smiting, which allows my archers to kill 1 extra skink. And as far as I can tell, the Skull Catapults can't shoot with the incantation, so there was no other effect. The wizard had to use his Earthing Rod to save himself from being sucked into a hole, and I lose a couple of ghouls from that. My other shooting does nothing. My catapult hit the Engine of the Gods, but rolled a 1 to wound. Lizard's turn 2, his skinks rush up and kill 3 of my skeleton archers. Apart from some pretty insignificant movement. That was his turn. I think he failed a couple of 9+ charges actually, and I shut down his magic phase by using my level 4, and that's it. On to Undead Legion turn 2. I charged my Blood Knights into his Skink Rocks unit. I also charged my Vargeists at his Skink unit with the Priest, and he fled. But I actually still caught them by rolling really high, and I ended up with one model even touching the Misty Swamp. Then I charged my Black Knights into his Engine of the Gods, and I charged my Ghouls with the Tomb King into the Scar Veteran on the Carnosaur. Now, I know I was supposed to use them as a bunker and shielding my flanks, so I don't know why I did that. My magic doesn't really do much because I tried to cast a bubbled movement buff to get my horsemen archers away from the skinks, to replenish that unit, to move both of my Vargeist units into position, and I failed a 16+ spell on 5 dice, which I think has a 6% chance to fail. Jeez. It's actually really bad because I hadn't realised I could reform after catching and fleeing enemy unit with my Vargeist, so they're stuck with one model still in the Misty Swamp. My horse archers are left in their vulnerable position and haven't been able to move to block the units from charging my Ghoul unit. My other Vargeist unit was supposed to come over, get ready for some counter charges. I really actually had a lot planned. Anyway, and then in my magic phase, the Sorcerer's Stones put Wild Form on one of his Skink units. In the shooting phase, one of my Screaming Skull catapults shoots the Carnosaur out from under his Old Blood. Otherwise, nothing really happens. My Vampire Lord soloed the Engine of the Gods, and I just reformed with that unit. Pretty impressed with him. And then in the Skink Crocs combat, he challenged, and I responded with one of my Blood Knights, which he killed. But in return, I killed all but one of the Croxagore with my Knights and my Vamp hero. And then my horses took out the remaining Croxagore, which was kind of brilliant for me. And they also took out a couple of Skinks. So I won that combat, and we stuck. In the Ghoul combat, I did 3 wounds to his Carnosaur, and I took 5 in return. Of course, with a charge and a nearby BSB, there was no crumble, and then at this point, I started to realise how much of a 40k player my opponent was, since he actually asked me if I was going to take a break test to flee with my unit. Now, I have to say, he does know his army really well, but some of his general Warhammer knowledge about other armies is really lacking. And it doesn't really help that English isn't his native language. And of course, this is a new army for me. It does kind of even out as a level playing field, but it is just a little confusing. So this is how it looks at the end of my turn after combat. I should have actually been able to overrun into his Old Blood, but since the Carnosaur was killed, I no longer could. I then have to take an initiative test for my Vargeists who got stuck in the swamp, and I fail, and I roll a d6 and take 4 wounds. And then I'm about to take 4 wounds when my opponent points out that it's actually d6 models and not wounds. So the whole unit goes just from landing one of them in a Misty Swamp. It's ridiculous. But, you know, I should have remembered I could reform, I guess. So moving on to his turn 3, his Razordons and his Old Blood move towards my back lines with my shooting. Then his Croxagore and Engine of the Gods charge the flanks of my Ghoul block, and his Chameleon Skinks rally. The Sorcerer's Stones put Wild Form on his Engine of the Gods this time, which means he now has the Skinks with Wild Form, the Engine of the Gods with Wild Form, and then he casts Wild Form on his Scarvet on the Carnosaur, which means he has 3 units with it all in a row, and 2 of them in combat with my Ghoul block. It was irresistible, I couldn't dispel it, and he lost the rest of his dispel dice. And this is all the dispel dice I had left at the end of that turn, because I didn't get to dispel a thing. So his Skinks shooting takes out 1 Vargeist, then his Razordons roll a couple of misfires and lead a bunch of his Skinks, and then in combat he challenged again with his Skink Chief in the unit formerly known as Skink Crocs, and this time I accepted with my vampire, cut him down. My Blood Knights killed a fair few skinks, and he runs. And I fail to catch him. On the right, his Monster Mash just destroys my ghoul unit. I end up with the Tomb King and just a couple of ghouls left after all of the crumbling. Onto Undead Legion turn 3. I charge my 2 remaining Vargheists into his skinks. The stand and shoot kills one, and I take a wound on the other. I don't know what I was thinking at that point. Then my Blood Knight unit charges off his skinks. I should have just used a flying vampire for this, honestly. Then I take my Vampire Lord out of my unit and face him against the Old Blood and turn the rest of my Black Knight unit towards my basically dead ghoul unit with Tomb Prints. I managed to cast a spell to bring back some of the Horsemen Archers, some of my ghouls from my Wizard's Ghoul bunker, and I just moved the bunker back slightly with that same spell, try to get out of range of the Old Blood and Razordons. My ghoul unit dies but takes the Carnosaur with him, and the rest of his units reform. My Vargheist wins combat and chases them down, but takes a wound in the process. Moving on to Lizard's turn 4, his Razordons and Old Blood either moved up or failed to charge, I'm not sure. Then his Stegodon is actually able to see my Horse Archers, so charges them. His Croxagore and Scarvet charge into my Black Knights, and he moves his skinks with the Priest away from my Vargheist and shoots the Vargheist with his Chameleon Skinks, killing the last one. My bunker gets shot at by his Razordons, not really losing much. His Skink unit with the Priest has a bunch of spells, and on to combat. I actually managed to take out his Scar Veteran, I think it was Killing Blow, but the Croxagore I'm having trouble with, and he actually manages to kill 5 Knights. The Stegodon obviously kills all the Horse Archers. And onto my turn, I charge my level 4 into the back of his Old Blood and Cloak of Dunes my Leech Priest out of the unit, trying to pop some wounds on the Razordons while also avoiding them. It doesn't do anything, but whatever. My Flying Vampire moves up to charge the Razordons, and my Blood Knights come forward as well. In combat, my Lord does nothing, and he manages to do a wound on my Vampire Lord. I didn't realise how powerful Old Bloods were. His ward save helped a lot, but really, it was a lot stronger than I expected. The other combat, nothing really happened, just I lost a few, he lost a few. On to his turn 5, although at this point we had both thought it was turn 6, so we ended the game after this round. He manages to move his Razordons and shoot my High Leech Priest. I think I forgot that they were skirmishing when I popped him out of the unit. Then in combat, my Lord gets killed. And yeah, I can't believe it at this point. Between the 2 turns of combat, he's warded about 5 attacks on a 4+, taking no wounds whatsoever, which means I don't get any of my Red Fury attacks. And then his return, he just manages to do a couple of wounds, and that's it. In his magic, he manages to kill his own wizard, and at least I get some points for that. And then moving on to the other combat, I have lost my entire unit, and he's down to 1 Croxagore, and I'm just on 1 wound with my White King BSB, and that's kind of a shame. I really didn't expect him to do so badly here. My Blood Knights charge into his Razordons, take him out, obviously, and, you know, there's a couple of other things that happen in the game. I think he actually managed to take out my White King with that last Croxagore. He took out my Ghoul unit with some Stegodons. I just forgot to take a couple of pictures. But really, it kind of fell apart in the end for me. The end result was something like 1,000 points of mine were left alive and 1,600 of his. Looking back on the game, I should have had my Skeleton Horse Archers charge the Skinks and then charge with my Vargheists, so he wouldn't have been able to stand and shoot. And then I should have, when I was chasing the Skink Crocs unit, or the unit formerly known as Skink Crocs, down, I should have just charged out my vampire and kept the Blood Knights and turned them around and brought them back. I also never should have brought my Vampire Lord against the Old Blood, but to be honest, that was a lack of rules knowledge. And that didn't just destroy him, that destroyed the Black Knight unit he used to be in. And then of course taking my High Leech Priest out of the unit was a good idea. I should have taken it out, but I shouldn't have put it near the Razordons because I think I just blanked and forgot that they were skirmishers. So all in all, quite a few mistakes that I definitely have learned from. I also need to change the list a little bit. I felt that even in just this Lizardmen army, I was actually having trouble with armor. To make up for that, I definitely need to take a Banshee or two. I definitely want to have ethereal units in this army. I also maybe need to take a Casket of Souls or something else. I don't know, and maybe even a little bit more archers or something. I also feel that I need to make my characters a little bit more defensive, or at least use them more defensively. So, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this battle report. If you did, please subscribe or, share it with your friends, whatever it is people do on YouTube. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter, and that's @ManticMoments, all one word. It's just like the YouTube channel.